So why storytelling as it relates to residential architecture? Well, our committees feel that quite often the design of people's personal spaces reflect their personal lives and express the stories that they would like to tell through the built environment. And so storytelling has always been a big part of our sector of the industry, and we feel that it's a great way to share knowledge and experience. And so generally our programming is built around storytelling. This particular program aims to underscore the immense value and growth prospects of a diverse and inclusive professional workforce. And I say that because that's regarding any professional workforce, not just architecture or design or interior design or landscape design. Our goal is to highlight the enduring significance of this topic. So, despite our government's efforts to suppress the discourse, and we want to do this again through personal narratives. In this room, individuals will share personal stories on the microphone, out in the middle, discussing how their identity shapes their perspective on their career and their life. And as the evening unfolds, you can engage, if you're joining us virtually, in a similar activity at home by writing a sentence or two in the Q&A, or you can write it in the chat, reflecting on maybe one aspect of your own identity that influences your sense of self and shapes your perception of the world. What is it about you that has a big impact on your point of view? And all of this will be shared with others as time allows. So perhaps even tonight, if we can pick up on a sentence or two that we could fit in between these stories that are told. In a moment, Namita Modi, co-chair of AIA New York's Committee on Residential Architecture, will make further introductory remarks. Before we delve into the topic, let's watch 3 film clips that not only showcase the enduring relevance of the subject matter in relationship to professional growth, but also highlight the importance of personal growth and the potential for individuals to make a positive contribution to society. So in other words, my belief is that if you can be proud of your own identity, then you are more empowered to make a positive contribution to society. And it could be also that the opposite is true, right? It could be also that people out there have not been comfortable embracing their identity and maybe have not been able to make a positive contribution. So what I would like to do is start with these 3 films. I think they're very different. The first one, I think, shows a lot of progress, before these recent years, and about how personal identity and cultural identity and really embracing your background translated into commercial success. And then we go a little further back in time and further back in time. So Sheila Bridges, Zaha Hadid, and then all the way back in time to Philip Johnson. So let's watch some films while we wait for people to gather some more. And at home, I hope you enjoy these films.
There's always been a connection between Harlem and Paris. And for me, this collaboration makes a lot of sense because of that. Toiles tell stories, and I just felt like all the French toiles that I had seen just didn't tell my story. And so the stories didn't really resonate. I think as an interior designer, I consider myself to be a visual storyteller. And most of the stories I'm telling are about other people's homes instead of my own. but when I designed the toile, I was able to sort of tell my own story. The design that I came up with for Le Creuset is black and white, and I think people probably would look at it and be surprised that instead of it being a bold, bright color, that we chose to go with black and white. And I just felt like it was the perfect complement to add to your existing collection of Le Creuset. I know because I have all these colorful pots and things in my own kitchens that adding the sort of black and white pattern into that, again, just brings in another layer, another point of interest. I really only want to collaborate with companies whose brands are kind of similar to mine in a way, in terms of things that are of high quality, things that are well designed, it's functional and works first, but is also beautiful. I've used their products for years, for decades. I don't hide them in my kitchen cabinets. They sit out on my range or on my countertop 24/7 because they're beautiful, they're functional, and they're beautiful. And it's authentic to my life, to my lifestyle. So the idea of collaboration with Le Creuset was extremely exciting to me, and ended up being a lot of fun. I think of toile as like the little black dress of pattern. It's classic, it's timeless, it kind of goes with everything.
So let's tap on architecture as a profession and 30 years of the Pritzker Prize being in the scene. You've been the only woman Arab architect to have won the prize. Do you think the profession is gender biased?
I don't think it's a profession.
What is it then?
I think people are biased. I mean...
And women aren't into it then?
No, I think that women... Well, if I observe people who heard me at school or people who I taught, there were many women architects who actually mostly were better in class than men. I mean, men would not like to hear that, but equally good. I think it's the continuity is a problem. And I think people to really excel in anything need a level of confidence and encouragement and support. And that doesn't exist everywhere. In a sense, it's almost easier for women to have the support and the encouragement within actually the Arab world environment, because there is you have your family, you have, the family is a larger unit. It's not about, the husband and wife and the child. So you have a bigger support system. And I think, like, my friends in Iraq who went into architecture or medicine, I think at the time found it much easier maybe than their counterparts in the West, because they had a support system around them. But in the West, I had prejudice because I was an Arab and I was a woman, and also I did unconventional stuff, so I'm not sure which came first. One can say all of it together was too much. Yeah, a woman in the profession was very difficult. It might be still difficult. It's easier. The difference is enormous in 20, 30 years. The foreign problem was always a problem. Doing things like winning Cardiff just after the Iraq Gulf War was not a very popular thing, and I do think there was some prejudice there. I will never be part of the boys' network. So, despite the interest and tremendous amount of press, we don't have many commercial projects in the UK nor in America or anywhere. I mean, maybe in other countries, but not in these.
So who supported you, or did you feel like you had to go it alone most of the time?
No, I had a tremendous amount of support from my parents, from, students of mine or colleagues, from my teachers, from these people. I mean, I always had a very big kind of student following. It was still very difficult. I mean, I bumped into a student of mine only a few days ago. I haven't seen him maybe in, I don't know, he keeps in touch with me, but I haven't seen him in maybe 18 years. And he said, my God, you had to fight. I mean, I sometimes forget it, but it was a fight.
Hurts would be isolation. Hurts would be not loving or not being loved. But it's all on that, on the mystery level, on the ineffable level of non-language. It's all on the, because if you don't get warm feelings, if love, agape, if you have a Greek word for it, it makes it much better. Because everybody, all Anglo-Saxons can't use that word love. And Emerald, maybe getting drunk helps, but not enough.
But you've been in love with the same man for a long time.
My friend and I have been together for 36 years.
36 years?
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Well, there are lots of people who get married. And I can't get married because he's the wrong sex, but tough.
Has that been an issue in your life? It
Yeah.
caused...
Oh, boy.
Really?
It caused lots of...
How so?
Agony. Because I wasn't like other people when I was a kid. I couldn't pal around with the guys and drink beer and do whatever they do.
You couldn't because they didn't accept you? Or you couldn't because you had no interest?
I wasn't interested. They couldn't believe it, and I couldn't. But there it was. So I was isolated. Gays are isolated in this country.
And how did it influence you the way you are?
Well, finally, I said, I guess I better just forget all these things and
not worry about it, acknowledge.
Settle down, and we never mention it again. But now, of course, it's a little more open, like this church I'm building.
But it split your father, you and your father.
My father said that doesn't, Philip, you just can't be in love with that boy. You just can't do that. Nobody does that. Go out with a good woman sometime.
But what did it do to the relationship with your father?
Not so good.
Well, you're being casual about it.
Of course. Well,
painful.
What else you're going to be is painful. It's very lonely.
Did you reconcile?
Didn't ever have to. We never got close.
You're never close?
No.
Your mother?
A little closer because we could talk art.
Yeah. But there was a loneliness about...
Oh, the isolation, the sense of being everybody out of step. Always out of step. Always out of step. Always looking for other things than you could have. And being ostracized in public opinion. I remember I wanted to get into the Navy. I worked very hard, and it was clear we don't take homosexuals in the Navy. I said, all I want to do is work with my country. What are you talking about? No good. And that kind of official hurt is quite strong, bad feeling. But if God is there, you see, it's very easy. Anybody want to convert me, I think I'd be a good subject. Because somebody did come along to help me. And I lived long enough so I could live with it. And I'm extremely happy.
Then what brings you great joy then? What other than your work?
My love.
Okay. They're on my head. Okay. Good evening, everyone.
I'm Namita Modi, and I co-chair the Committee on Residential Architecture with Dennis Wedlick, who you've met a little while ago. Welcome to the third segment of the Howl series, an ongoing series of open mic forums at the Center for Architecture that explore themes in the profession of architecture and design through storytelling. At our past Howls events that we've had over the last 2 years, we've explored different themes. In Howl 1, we explored themes such as placemaking and the making of home. In Howl 2, it was called The Advice I Would Give to a Younger Version of Myself. And that was actually an event that was co-hosted with the AIA New York Torch Mentorship Program. So that was a lot of fun with them, different group. And so I also invite you guys to watch those. If you're interested in watching Howl 1, Howl 2, it lives on our webpage at AIA New York Committee on Residential Architecture, as will tonight's program when we're finished with it. So the theme for tonight's event is for designers to share a personal story on gender and identity and how it may have had a dramatic impact on their views of the built environment and professional development as designers. Gender and identity have always played a role in the way most seminal designers and their careers came into being, as you have just seen in these films tonight. So tonight we're also delighted that we are co-hosting this program with AIA Brooklyn, and wanted to say hello to everyone who came from Brooklyn and from that committee tonight. Welcome also to Courtney Wollaston and David Cunningham, who co-chair AIA Brooklyn CRAN. And welcome to all their members tonight. And thank you so much for making this event free for everyone. So tonight, the format, I think Dennis mentioned a little bit, so we'll have a series of planted storytellers mixed in with open mic. And this will be orchestrated by our moderators tonight, who are kind of like our MCs. We have Abriannah Aiken and Matthew Bremer, and I will tell you a little bit about them in a minute. They will draw the audience members into a conversation, inviting participants to share their views and experiences. And as Dennis mentioned earlier, we'll also be reading comments from our virtual audience tonight, who are also participating, and we will be reading their comments. And if they have stories they want to tell, we can tell their story as well. But please do that in the Q&A. And we will do that throughout the evening. So this program offers a safe space where everyone's personal identity and perspectives are acknowledged and appreciated. Please join us for an interactive learning experience, a celebration of diversity, and an opportunity for each to share his, her, their personal story. So tonight, our moderators, Abriannah Aiken, is co-author of Disappearing Queer Spaces, a book documenting important queer landmarks from the Harlem Renaissance, and co-founder of New York Operations Officer of Architecture and Advocacy, an organization that works to undesign spatial injustice in the built environment through our community workshops and design builds. As a Manhattan-based designer associate at the DLR Group, her work is focused on the design of cultural and performing arts buildings and urban planning. Her work with Feminist Spatial Practices, a community of architects, designers, and practitioners working toward gender equity in the built environment, was recently featured as a part of Chronogram's Symposium, an exhibition organized by Eflux Architecture and the Jenks Foundation. Matthew Bremer, AIA, is founder and principal of Architecture Information. Based in New York City and in the Hudson Valley, the firm has won multiple local and national awards and recognition for its residential, commercial, and institutional projects. Bremer has taught architecture around the country, and in 2009 was recognized by AIA with the National Young Architects Award. In 2023, Bremer served as president of AIA New York and prioritized equity for marginalized design professionals, which resulted in the formation of AIA New York QIA plus Alliance, creating space to give voice to the value of diversity and inclusion within the chapter and throughout all of the city and the state of New York. He's also our dear friend here at AIA. I'm going to first have Abriannah come up, and she will start for tonight. She'll begin the event. Do you want to do it here? Yes. Okay. Wherever you want to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll say a few words and then I'll tell my story, but I have a picture, but I'll show it later. Also, welcome everyone. You're so far away, so if y'all want to come closer, feel free. And if even you want to sit on the ground, we have a cute dog, so feel free to come. I know there's some folks on the sides by the pizza, and everyone please eat and drink and have a great time. So yes, thank you. Come closer. Let's be a family tonight. Let's be a village. So hello and welcome. My name is Abriannah Aiken. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm so honored to be co-moderating tonight. I'm beyond excited to hear everyone else's stories and to tell my own. And so I just want to say a few words, and then we'll jump into the fun. So yes, awesome. Yay, everyone's coming forward. We don't bite. So to begin, I want to share a little bit about myself and to truly celebrate my village, some of which is here tonight. Some of my friends from Columbia GSAP are here. They're my village, as well as some of my friends from my office, DLR Group, and I'm so excited to see them here. Vanessa Kasabian from DLR Group will be speaking a little bit later, and they really all helped shape who I am today. And then Namita also mentioned a couple of the other organizations I'm a part of, so I'll speak about those a little bit. So I am the co-founder of Architecture and Advocacy, a nonprofit I started alongside my fellow undergraduate students at USC. And our mission is to undesign spatial injustice. And that starts with acknowledging that we are entrenched within a society and a built environment that is unjust, racially, economically, and socially. And we as designers have contributed to that all the way back to redlining as well as to the present day by not including communities' voices within the design process. And so through workshops and design builds, A+A really works to place power and agency back into communities' hands and really work with them to design brighter futures. And so I have a couple of my A+A village with me tonight, and I'm grateful to all of them. I am also, as Namita said, a co-founder of Feminist Spatial Practices. We are a collective of designers, artists, practitioners, architects that work towards gender equity within the built environment. And although we were only founded 2 years ago, we've exhibited across the world, taught workshops and courses on what feminist spatial practices even means, and co-created feminist future collages together, and truly built a global community. And we recently launched an interactive web platform archiving and celebrating over 600 practices, people, and projects that truly embody what feminism can mean in the built environment. So I encourage you all, feministspatialpractices.com, go check it out. And tonight, you will hear from some of the amazing people that I like to call friends from Feminist Spatial Practices, including Lindsay Harkema, Ro Gia, and Riddhi Chopra. And so for me, in these dark times that we are living in, where women's rights to their own bodies are being taken away, where trans communities are being attacked for just existing, where freedom of speech is being taken away day by day by day, in these dark times that make me hate waking up and looking at the news, I need my village. I need a space to feel seen and heard, to know I'm not crazy for being terrified of being a queer woman in this country, knowing that others have it even worse. I rely on my village, and my village relies on me. And so we need community now more than ever. And so for everyone here tonight, this is your village. This is a space of safety, of celebration, of grieving, of any other emotions that you all feel like you need to share in front of a microphone. And really tonight, this is gonna be a space of radical solidarity. And so I want each and every one of you to know that no matter what story you have to share up here tonight and what emotions you might be feeling, any and all of those emotions are valid and welcomed, and they'll be cherished and respected here in this space. And so I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. We are living in terrifying times, but together, especially tonight, we can hopefully see that we are not alone. Tonight, we can celebrate how far we've come as an industry, to be inspired by the work being done, the acts of kindness and solidarity that got all of us here tonight. And tonight, we will be a village that is strong enough to get us to brighter futures, to move us towards equitable and just futurescapes for women, trans folks, immigrants, and any other communities on the margins. And so I thank you from the deepest part of my heart for being here tonight. And with that, I will begin my story, which is just one of many that you'll hear. And so Jake, I heard there's a Jake that is in charge of all of this. If you're able to pull up the image. Yay, thank you. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed to be showing this image. But here is baby Abri in her second year of her final review in undergraduate architecture school. And I'll get back to this picture later, but just be glad I'm sharing it. I'm so embarrassed. But let's go back a little bit previous into the semester, where I turned to my professor, Lauren, and I said, I am so excited for the mid-review. And she asked, why? Because she was stunned that anyone would be excited for a review in architecture school. Y'all can laugh too, or like emote. And I responded to her, well, I'm so excited for my mid-review because this is gonna be the first time I have a female on my jury, because you're my professor and you have to be on my jury because you are my professor. And she was so shocked that she couldn't even respond. And in that moment, she realized that she was my first female professor, one of very few in the school, and that meant a lot more to me and to others around me than she could have ever even realized. And so my journey with architecture hasn't been about who's in the room, but rather who isn't in the room. It was noticing that, sure, I finally had a professor with the same gender identity as me, but could everyone else in my class say the same? There weren't any Black architecture professors at first, very few Asian architecture professors, no non-binary architecture professors. So many of my colleagues would never be able to finally have that moment that I was having, of seeing myself in both the field and in academia. And so the question then became, how do we get more diverse voices into those rooms? And so I helped co-found a women's org at my undergrad, where we talked about community and invited women to come and share their stories and experiences, but it never felt like it was enough. And so then I started to question my question. Sure, we need representation in architecture, and people were pushing that forward, but there was still something bigger going on. We have rooms to fill and ceilings to break, but then I started to ask myself, why do we even have rooms at all? And so there are systems in place and boundaries and rooms, and all of this was constructed. It was all by design. And so by years of pushing communities out of decision-making processes in the built environment, we built these rooms. And I kind of wanted to break them all apart. And so I started to co-found some of these organizations like Architecture and Advocacy and Feminist Spatial Practices, and surround myself with people asking those same questions and wanting to break those same boundaries. And all of these folks are in the silos, on the margins, in silence, wondering if we were the only ones, and we weren't. And so it was less about everyone trying to fit into a room, and more about breaking those boundaries and taking them away. And so I truly imagine a future where everyone's voice has weight and impact in the design field and community organizing. And it took my first female professor for me to begin this journey of questioning and discovery and community building. And so to come back to this photo, if you maybe can guess already, for the final review, my professor, right before I went up, grabbed my friend and said, okay, go upstairs and make sure you take a picture of Abri before she presents her final review. And I was obviously already terrified, so this made me even more because she was not having everyone else get a photo. And I was so confused, so nervous, and I got up there, and then I realized every single one of the people in my jury was a female identifying person. And Lauren had done that on purpose for me because she wanted me to remember that moment for the rest of my career. And after that moment, I never had the same thing. It was never the same. And I never had a female identifying jury altogether like this. And I knew immediately that that was the story that I wanted to share today. And so since then, I've been paying it forward. There are amazing professors that are creating spaces where queer folks are only on the jury together, and I've been participating in those. I have been queering how I do my own reviews, where I ask my students, what do y'all actually want to do? Like, do you all want to have conversations? Does it want to be a science fair? And really putting the agency into my students' hands. And I always think about Lauren and wonder if she remembers this moment just as much as I have. Because it's not really about taking up space or creating space, it's about cultivating it. So in that moment, Lauren cultivated an urge and a passion I had towards gender equity within the design field, something I didn't know I was allowed to care about or do anything about. And she showed me that I could. And sometimes it was just the small things, like who you invited to a jury, that could change everything for me. And so here I am, breaking barriers, building community, cultivating passions, and paying it forward. And so I'm so excited to hear all of your stories here tonight. And yeah, we can do snaps or like claps or whatever y'all want. And I hope we do it for everyone else too. But I've planted a few folks who have to tell stories. No one has to, except for these people. And so I will pass it off to my dear friend Riddhi Chopra, who is a part of Feminist Spatial Practices. I met her through a course that I was co-teaching with Bryony Roberts about reproductive justice at Columbia. So I'm so excited to hear her story and about what she has to share today. So thank you all. Yeah.
I wish I had any of those topics being covered today, but I don't. I did want to say, like, hearing Avery talk, and I'm so grateful this topic is out here today because it makes you think about so many instances in your life, and I struggled to choose what to talk about. I don't think this also truly does justice to what I feel and probably all my learnings, but I've penned down one story that I'd like to share because it's about me migrating through different cities and my experiences of living in those spaces. So growing up in New Delhi, in India, I was no stranger to fear. The idea of precaution was a constant navigating the street required not just, it required not just an awareness of the physical space, but also an understanding of when, where, and how I could exist within it. Delhi was a city of contrasts. It is vast, sprawling, but it's also beautiful. It's got a lot of history, a lot of energy. Yet, as a woman and as a teenager growing up in the city, there were unspoken rules about safety that shaped every step throughout my childhood, whether it was crossing a road or going to the market to buy something, or even being independent enough to drive a car but having restrictions on, or just like a mental alarm clock that, okay, it's 8 o'clock, it's dark, go home. I love my city, don't get me wrong, I just landed 4 hours ago, but I could never completely shed this feeling of being constantly alert while growing up. Each moment demanded my attention. And I learned early on to read spaces around me, to pick up on those unspoken cues that tell me where I could walk, how lit a building or a road should be for me to feel safe around or walk through. And I think that was a big learning I got in my city that I call home. It taught me that spaces are not neutral. They are shaped by people's experiences, their interactions with them, and their histories, which helped me become more informed and intentional, I believe, as a designer. Because I would like to believe I'm more aware of my environments, and I also now realize how they can be something that confine you but also liberate you at the same time. And if anyone's aware of India, I next moved to Bombay, the next obvious choice in my life, a city which at first glance seemed like a complete departure from the deliberate caution of Delhi. Mumbai, with its constant hum, its crowd, its raw, unfiltered energy, it was an exhilarating change. But here, the chaos didn't feel like something to be wary of. It was something that was inviting. I felt freedom for the first time in the city. I did not truly know what freedom was, and this was around when I was, 23. That's where I truly realized what it meant to walk on the streets on my own and not fear that something could happen. And the more I explored, the more I realized that the bustling streets and the never-ending movement of people, they were just there for me to feel safe. I started taking late-night drives to Marine Drive. There was something very uniquely calming about the crowd gathered by the sea, waves crashing against the shore, the lights that lined the promenade and the people walking by. It gave me a sense of belonging. In Mumbai, I feel like I could like just walk through the city at night amongst hundreds of people and still feel at home. And that comfort that I felt in that chaos is a feeling that I took from that city. And this newfound sense of the city's unpredictability made me rethink my relationship with space. Mumbai didn't demand my constant vigilance the way Delhi did. Instead, it offered openness, one where I didn't have to fit into predefined spaces, but could simply just exist. The city's chaotic nature became an opportunity to live without overthinking every move. I could find a place in a world without constantly managing my safety. And then I moved to New York, which is constantly compared to Mumbai in terms of its density, its build structure. It's a city of dreams, ambition, constant motion. And at first, I think the energy of New York, it felt very familiar. The crowded streets, the fast pace of life, the undeniable sense that the city never sleeps. They were all elements I recognized that I felt safe around. But the experience was a little different. In New York, the crowds didn't feel to offer the same sense of connection that I felt before. I was new here. I was an outsider. The scale of the city and the anonymity it offered were very different from the chaos. And over here, I found myself questioning my relationship with the city and where I stand in it, like the spaces between those chaos, like just taking the subway, the overcrowded subway, how that was a moment for me to start reconnecting with myself. It became a moment of reflection. So each of these cities, I believe, has shaped the way I view space, not just as a designer, but as a person who moves through them as a woman. And they've given me different lens to which I now feel view the world. Ultimately, it's these lessons I carry. But I feel there's a question maybe we all can think about, and I constantly think about that. Can a city really be called inclusive and allow us, if it doesn't allow us to move freely without fear, without constraints, without caution, and without the need to constantly feel like we have to adjust ourselves to fit in? So yeah, these were my 3 instances that I related with the topic. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Oh no, this is too tall. Amazing. So the next folks, we're going to have you stand here, which is even more daunting than standing behind the podium, but I believe in all of you and myself. Every time I'm going to have to stand up here. But thank you, Rudy. That was amazing. Love hearing about your journey. So excited to hear about, what cities are next and how you actually truly start to understand what an inclusive city could look and feel like. So thank you so much. And yeah, tilted. Amazing. That was silly of me. I was on my tippy toes for no reason. It's okay. I need pizza. But I would love to invite Vanessa Kasabian from DLR Group to come up next. She's been an amazing mentor to me since we both have been at DLR Group, and I'm just so excited to hear about her journey. And and then afterwards, start thinking about who wants to go next, because we'll open it up to every one of you. So, Vanessa, I would love to hear your story.
So I'm a different generation than Abri. And I think that I want to talk a little bit about accepting myself as a female architect. I grew up in Texas, so in the South. I grew up with a single mother and grew up with my grandmother. So I was basically in a matriarchal family. I hung the blinds, I painted rooms, I patched drywall up until I went to college, just helping out my house. And so it never seemed different. I've always wanted to be an architect, and I always kind of was just put in a position to kind of like do these things. When I was a kid, I was in a drafting class. I was the only female that was in the drafting class, and I loved it. And I didn't think, hey, look at me. I just was unique. This is something that I really wanted to do, and I loved it, and I didn't think anything about it. I went to Tulane for undergraduate, so moved to another southern city, very interesting city. And also, at that time, the class was divided fairly equally in male and female. So once again, I didn't think too much about it. Never identified as a female architect. I was just an architectural student. I remember distinctly, though, at one of the classes, there was a presentation about, okay, when you graduate and you go and you interview, you men, you need to wear a suit and a tie, and the women need to wear a black dress and some pearls. And of course, you know, my friends and I are looking at each other like, who is this guy? You know, what do you mean? So that was kind of the first instance that I was like, wow, that's different. He was a different generation than us. But from that point, I moved into Washington, D.C. So also, I'm an only child, so just kind of kept moving forward and doing, you know, looking for different opportunities. I have been very kind of blessed in my career. I've done the things that I've wanted to do and worked for some really amazing firms. One of the interesting things, though, that I did was I worked for some international firms, some international design firms, where I realized at that moment that the American firms are slightly different. You know, I had realized then that it's not just the way it is that the men are kind of the principals of the firms and running the firms, but wow, internationally there's a very distinct, you know, equality between men and women in the design firm. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I worked with international firms for about 10 years. And that really kind of drew me into the fact that, wow, there is a difference. And I started to kind of think about gender and like what my role was in architecture. Same thing, I just kind of was working on a project for the Calgary Public Library. And what was really interesting about that is there were 4 women. There was myself as a lead designer. There was the woman that was a project manager. Our client was a female. And then the client's project manager was a female. So the 4 of us were kind of like leading this whole process. And yet there came to be the big public presentation. And all 4 of us sat in a line while the men that were above us at the firms, all 4 of them did the presentation. That was a very distinct, we all looked at each other again and we're like, this is interesting that, you know, we have put all this effort into it and yet we're sitting on the front row watching the presentations. So I think that, you know, there's definitely a shift in that. I'm now at a global design leader at a very large design firm that has offices around the world. When I joined, I had somebody, a male, but it was a very, very strong mentor to me. And so that all of a sudden became something that I realized was really important to me and important to my growth as an architect. I would say that I still always wanted to be known as an architect. I never wanted to be a female architect. I wanted to be an architect. I didn't want to have that divide. The kind of key element for me, though, was when the younger generation started to come to me and say, wow, you really impacted my career. You are a mentor for me. This is something that really, you know, you did this and made me feel like I was empowered. So all of a sudden for me, that became an instance where, okay, this does matter. Gender does matter, and it matters that I'm a female design leader and that I can impact other people's lives. And that was a very important moment for me. because I think that, we do have, in terms of being a female architect, that is one instance, but the most difficult thing that has ever happened to me was actually becoming a mother and taking that role on. So the obstacle for being a female architect really has no comparison to that. When I had my son, I was in a firm where I would go home at 6 p.m. I would put my son to bed. I would come back to the office, this was before Zoom, and I would come back to the office and work till 10, 11 o'clock at night because I didn't want it to be special. I wanted it to be, I am an architect, I'm part of the team, this is just an aspect. Realizing as I looked around too, though, that I was the only mother at the firm. There were 5, 6 other fathers that had kids. They were there, nobody was going home. That was the most impactful thing for me, to really kind of understand, wow, this is something that, is a very big gender bias at this point. But I got through that because my husband also is a very strong advocate for my career. So it enabled me to be who I wanted to be. So that was something that was very, very key for me in terms of, elevating my career and become a female architect, who I am today. But I think that the kind of key, most important thing is that as a female architect, I now feel that I can empower and bring up the next generation. And so for me, I think that that's been a real blessing and sort of allowed me, as I've grown into being who I am, that I'm able to impact people like Abri, hopefully in a positive way. So, thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you for being an amazing advocate, female architect, mother, like all those stories were amazing. And I don't know what I would have done if a professor told me to wear a dress to an interview. I would have been like, no, I'll do what I want. Thank you. But yeah, who wants to go next? We can have an awkward silence too, as people. Yes, thank you. Let's snap for our first speaker. Thank you so much. You have the floor.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. And thank you, David Cunningham of Cran AI Brooklyn, for getting me to show up today. So first disclaimer, so hands for David Cunningham. And then first disclaimer, I am not an architect, but I am a manufacturer rep and a huge fan of all of you in this room. To preface that, so I'm Judy. Nice to meet all of you. I'm going to focus on, hi! And I'm going to focus on the topic of identity. Judy is actually only 3 years old as of this summer. And before that, I was operating under Chia Hasegawa, my legal name, and growing up, I was terrified of the world. I was terrified of people. I was terrified of a lot of things. My place was on paper and on drawing. I'm a drawing degree major. I took a lot of furniture design classes, so did all the creative things. And even in undergrad, where the professors took me under their wing, they loved my work, they tried to get to know me, I could not talk about myself. I would just end up in tears because the vulnerability was a foreign concept to me. And so fast forward, I was like, you know what, I need to get out of this. It's uncomfortable, it doesn't feel right, I don't want to be this person. And so, I had, amazing employers who actually supported me to go to therapy, which is really unheard of. So with that kind of spearheaded with going to therapy, going to coaching, improv classes, this whole gamut. My previous employer even finally sent me to Dale Carnegie Public Speaking because, I was great with the details, I was great with customers, I just needed to work on my outward facing. And so with all that growth and support squeezed all in over the years, I was doing a women's career coaching class. This was right after the pandemic. And so the whole world was changing. Individuals were taking the leap and starting their own firms. Companies were pivoting and completely rebranding to survive the pandemic and whatnot. And I was seeing all this tremendous change going on around me. I was like, there's so much movement. There's so much energy happening here. I'm like, maybe I could rebrand myself. I was like, and I really started thinking about it. And so it's like, okay, well, if I could be somebody that I wanted to be, who do I want to become? And so I really thought about that for a long time, and I finally landed on the name Judy, inspired by Judy Garland. She's actually, to my understanding, she was 4'11". I'm 4'10 and a half. So we're actually about the same height. But that was even before I even really knew that little factoid. But that little factoid actually cemented it for me. Tiny and mighty, and really having a presence. And so with that, I slowly launched Judy in like a, part of my life that didn't interact anywhere else, and like learned how to respond to the name Judy. And so I finally started taking on, okay, who do I want to be when I show up? What kind of energy do I want to be professionally, personally, going forward? Somebody who has really not figured out, I'm still grappling with it, but I feel like I've made tremendous progress in the fear department. And so hence the first hand raise as well. And choosing identity as part of it, like the more y'all will see me in the official events, you're gonna start seeing this color, at least for now, until I tire of it. And so with all these, because I think architecture, New York, that's solid black. And I'm like, architecture doesn't have to be that constrained. We have options, we have colors, we have textures, we have palettes. And so I was like, you know what? How do I bring that Judy personality, in addition to the rebrand, to the kind of presentation of Judy as well? And so today you see Judy, who is about to hit 3 years old this summer, to say, I'm here to be a friend, an awesome person, and hopefully be fearless going forward. So that is my 2 cents on identity. Thank you so much.
Happy early birthday, Judy. You are much mightier and wiser than, as a 3-year-old, than I would ever be. So thank you so much for going first. Amazing. Does anyone else want to go? Let's be mighty like Judy. I'm good at the awkward pauses. You can go, Lindsay. Yeah, or we, yeah. Tom, yes, Tom from my office DLR group. I'm very interested in this story.
Yeah, not to over inundate you all with DLR folks, but I'm a proud colleague of Vanessa and Abri's at DLR here in New York. I'm probably a very traditional architect, and so it starts boring, but I'm going to lead to a point about my identity. I was raised in the DC area in a traditional Catholic family, and had the benefit of traveling around the world as a State Department brat. So I got to see all these great cultures in Asia and the Middle East. And my father took us all, me and my 4 siblings, to all kinds of sites where I fell in love with architecture at like 10 through 13 years old. And it was a sense of wonder, is the best way I could describe it, that gave me a sense of the presence and something that I wanted to follow and pursue in that realm. And that kind of relates to the identity question. So I benefited from all the things that many of you haven't. I was a white kid, a guy in a great suburb, Fairfax, Virginia, where I got to go to drafting classes in high school like Vanessa. And I was on a path to architecture by the time I was like 15 years old. But one thing that I've always struggled with is my patriarchal Catholic side. And I'm just recently, in the last 5 to 7 years, discovering more about my own identity through becoming more introverted as opposed to extroverted in terms of how I think about my own growth. And what I've realized is that I've been raised with this patriarchal Catholic kind of background and view of the world, and I've always felt uncomfortable seeing myself just as a white male related to other things. And there was something missing in terms of how I felt I related to other things. And so I fell in love with the Rubin Museum and Tibetan Buddhism and that realm of art. And Robert Thurman, who teaches world religion or taught world religion, formed Tibet House and a key proponent at Rubin Museum, which is now closed, and among others, has become kind of a teacher to me. And I've become aware of exercises and breathing in particular that create a sense of non-dual awareness. And that to me is the most profound thing. And it's helping me to identify both the male and the female within myself, just like all other contrasts. And basically where it leads to is a awareness of the non-duality of all of existence and how it's not either or, but it's always the relationship and the in-between between things. So you heard, Philip Johnson talk about the inevitable, and Louis Kahn talked about the intangible. Robert Irwin talks about seeing as forgetting the name of the thing that you see. Those are all kind of descriptions of the same place that you go to where you experience a sense of wonder and you don't see things through dualism, high, low, hard, soft, male, female, all of it. And that non-dual awareness by turning inward is just a super valuable exercise. That's my share.
Thank you, Tom. It's always amazing to hear about, like all of the different retreats you're going on. You have to lead a breathing exercise with us maybe later if no one comes up. So that's my threat to you all. Come up. But does anyone else want to give a story? Yay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Melinda Koo. I'm working in ADG, Architecture Engineering, and I was supposed to be one of the panelists 1 year ago here when we did the presentation of the Stonewall Visiting Center because I was a part of design team, but at the same week, I was in a bicycle accident, and when you guys were doing the presentation here, I was in the hospital. So I'm glad I'm back here. And thank you. He, she, they architects, what an interesting name. I was a he architect. I was a they architect, and now I am a she architect. So I have been walked through everything. So yeah, when my colleague, introduced me about this event, it feels like, the name was kind of connected to myself. I was grown in Seoul, South Korea, and as a boy, and I went to the architecture school just because I didn't want it to become like my father or my brother. They were all like math, chemistry. They're all like scientists, engineering, spirit of people. And I just wanted to do something different because I knew I was different. And when I first went to got my job, the office, back then, like people smoke indoors. So and when I made any mistakes, they hit me. And I had to clean up the studio in the morning, and I had to clean up the, vending machine for the coffees and like Cokes or cans. And I had to go to the military training because that was mandatory for males in Korea. So I learned how to use M16 and other stuff. And I went to so-called, lobby gatherings, like when, they buy drinks and they buy women because, the principals and clients, they're all males. So that was the environment I learned about drawings and the projects at the beginning. I didn't enjoy that much, so I came to the US, but I had to sell what I could do, so I was working more of design-oriented international firms, and I moved to, I moved to more local projects, like gradually. And I thought I was looking for an answer for the identity, and I tried to see like who I am, and I still remember during the gender therapy, one of the session, when I said the word, I was in the middle, and my therapist told me that you're not in the middle of any, you're just yourself. So I think that truly, that's still the one thing I'm holding up. So I'm a first-generation immigrant, I'm a female, and I'm a person of color. But more than anything, I'm just me. And whether I'm gonna stay in this shape or this identity, I don't know. I started transitioning without the answer, because architects like learning things, right? We always learn new things through our projects, and I love that part. So when I started to decide, or thinking about the transitioning, I bought books, and I read books while commuting and in the weekends. I read books, I did my own homework. I was writing down the answers on my own notebook. And what I learned, that nobody will tell me who I am. So I started the journey without knowing the answer, and I just stopped where I feel comfortable. And I think that's the same with the profession. I'm not the one who always wanted to be an architect, and I have like a lot of projects I love so much, and I'm glad that they're gonna stay like longer than myself. But I don't think that defines me. And I don't think anything defines me other than myself. So I hope everybody would feel comfortable with their own self. Thank you.
Amazing. I think I cannot be the only MC. There are two of us. So I will pass it off to Matt to speak a little bit, maybe tell their story. Maybe the dog might speak a little bit too.
Oh, the dog will speak.
The dog will speak. But thank you for that amazing.
Moses is very, very mouthy. And I love the fact that I am very late in the game, mini emceeing, and wildly intimidated to have to talk about identity after all of these incredible humans of whatever identification they choose. And what a group so far. I've been thinking a lot about identity, primarily because, see, mouthy one. I've been thinking a lot about identity in the last few days, mainly because Dennis and Amita told me, you're gonna wing it. It's about let it be, it's storytelling. Well, a lot of stories this last week. Well, for those of you that know me, and I would honestly say probably no one really knows me, because who else around here can say that anyone else truly knows them? Isn't that about what identity, about the fundamental conundrum of identity? It's everything and nothing at the same time. It's everything to the individual, and in a way, it's nothing because it's constantly shifting. My identity isn't the same now as it was 2 years ago, 20 years ago. My identity at the moment is being a bad parent. And actually, I've been identifying as a bad parent very intensely the last few days. You don't know that, or for those of you that do know me a little bit, you know that there are usually 2 dogs on this leash. One of them just got out of the hospital a few hours ago. So my identity is completely absorbed by the notion of being a bad dad, of having not given the next guard to the dog that went to the dog park, got a tick, and literally almost died this weekend. I mean, I'm probably gonna tear up just because it's awful. But, you know, I'm a Texan, I'm queer, you kind of heard some of my biography, none of it fucking matters. Because 5 years from now, I'll probably have another bio, or you can have another bio. We all can. But I think what's sort of amazing is that we are all in a space where our otherness can really be appreciated, accepted, and most importantly, deployed. And that we need right now more than ever. So embrace the you. It probably won't be that you tomorrow. Let it evolve. Who cares? Identity is everything and identity is nothing. And I really don't have a lot more to say about it. And there's so many other people that I'm really excited to hear about. So I'm gonna let Avery MC because she's doing such a better job. I'm identifying as the really crappy MC tonight, and I'm fine with it.
And I know how to make the mic lower now. I would love to invite Lindsay Harkema to also speak while everyone else thinks about their amazing stories that they are going to share. Lindsay is also a part of Feminist Facial Practices with me. She teaches all over the city and beyond, and is also a part of WIP, and she's an amazing mentor and friend. So I'm very excited to hear her story. So thank you.
Thank you, Abri. It's great to be here, and I told Abri I didn't want to go first, and then as more people are talking, I'm realizing, like, the pressure is building. It's not getting less. I wish I had gone first. No. It's been really great to hear everything that's been shared so far. Some themes with my story that are shared amongst those that have already been told, but as a woman in architecture, who is part of a practice called WIP, which also stands for Women in Practice. Gender is, of course, something that is considered in my work, and increasingly so through teaching, through writing, publishing, and through practice. And so in the context of this event, I also thought, like, well, when did I start identifying as a woman in architecture? I don't think it was in college. I think in college I was fortunate to have women professors from the beginning, so didn't notice that. I was a student athlete, so maybe I just kind of had my head down, trying to figure out what architecture was and how to go about the design process. Though race was really a part of it, because I went to college in St. Louis, and fortunately we were very aware of the history of redlining and racism and how it shaped the built environment. But I went directly to grad school in Texas at Rice. And I think there is when I started to get a better sense of my identity as a woman in architecture, also kind of influenced by a number of young female professors who also were very encouraging of sort of not abiding necessarily by all of architecture's canons or listening to all the kind of dominant male voices. I got super into feminist theory. I remember having like a stack of books on my studio desk because I was so interested in it, reading Elizabeth Gross, Beatrice Colomina, like all of the things, and giving a really proud presentation about feminist theory and having my very well-known male professor respond kind of a little bit making fun of it. And I realized, like, oh, not every sort of idea or framework is taken seriously in this profession. What a privilege it is if the one you sort of are inspired by is one of those things. And so I do have notes with me to just keep me on track, but as I entered into the professional, into my professional career, I also noticed that women's career trajectories, like Vanessa was mentioning, were somewhat different than men's. They were often encouraged and promoted as maybe project managers or technical leads, senior administrators, not as much as design leaders. And having children seemed to be more of a constraint for women, and strong-willed women were often perceived as problematic, while the same personality traits in men were liked and respected. And then I had a baby. And I remember actually sitting in this room at another event with an incredible panel of women that I, in academia, that I very much respect. And one of them said that she had waited until she was tenured to get pregnant. And I was in the audience, 10 months pregnant, having some teaching under my belt, but about to leave that position because it was no longer going to work. And I thought, shoot, I did this all wrong. I was supposed to have achieved all the things before I dared to become a parent. And so I really kind of entered into parenthood thinking with that initial fear that it would be the end of a professional life I hadn't achieved because I hadn't done those things in practice or in teaching before. And that wasn't because it actually had, but because I had sort of absorbed that mentality from the discipline. And so through a process of connecting with other women in practice, other women who are building or leading their own independent practices, and thinking about sort of working in different ways than the sort of normal tracks in architecture. We realized as a community that none of these things had to be true. It is true that imposter syndrome is real, that we all have feelings of uncertainty in our personal and professional lives and the relationship between those things. And we all really have a desire for community and ways of collaborating in order to learn from each other and enjoy doing it. So WIP started as an informal sort of peer group and a resource sharing network, a smaller shared practice form within that of a kind of core group of 7 members. Our work and the way we organize our work is inspired by workers' cooperatives and other past feminist practices like Matrix Architecture Cooperative or others that you might find in the FSP catalog or maybe mentioned upstairs in the exhibition that's opening this week. So since that time, I've had 2 more kids, and I've come to think of practice as a work in progress. At times, it's a form of organizing, it's a think tank, it's a platform for collaboration, it's a living thing that ebbs and flows. And I feel now that my gender identity is inextricable from practice as an architect. But that also means that the way I practice is more aligned with feminist values that emphasize situatedness, understanding everything in relationship to context and an individual person's identity relative to that context. The importance of autoethnography, which we're doing here, learning from your own self-experience in order to connect and understand others, and the reciprocity between individual and collective needs. So I wanted to close with a quote from Audre Lorde, who, in the Uses of the Erotic as Power, says, "The aim of each thing we do is to make our lives and the lives of our children more possible and more rich," which I believe in architecture that extends beyond biological children, but of course in really thinking about the future of the built environment, of society, of the profession. So Lorde's feminism was rooted in self-empowerment and embracing the multifaceted nature of individual identity, recognizing differences, fostering solidarity through intersectionality. Society often celebrates women for their sacrifices, but women do not need to be selfless in order to succeed professionally, to make an impact, or to take care of their families. Thank you.
So I'm gonna call a friend with whom I'm very competitive with, Brian Masana, incredible architect, dear friend. You know. Yes. Brian identifies as awesome.
I'm putting my black jacket on for Judy, actually. Can you hear me? Judy, that was incredibly impressive because I feel like I'm going through the same transformation that I've put myself through for a couple of years. But I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, except I'll start off by saying that I'm gay. I'm an architect. I live in New York. And I say that I'm gay, and I've always been gay, but I've only felt gay a few times. So I felt gay when I was forced out of my closet, having only been in my closet for maybe a month. My parents found out I was seeing my current business partner, who was my life partner, who still is my life partner in a very different way, Toby O'Rourke. And my whole life changed. I grew up in Malibu. I'm turning 60, by the way, so Malibu wasn't quite the same as it is now. It was more quiet. And at that point, it was the first time I felt like, oh shit, I'm gay. My parents were going to take everything away from me. I was just about to go to Italy for my last year of undergraduate at Cal Poly, and they said, no, you're going to a therapist, and you're going to hide it all. So I did that for a summer, and I went to Italy because I promised that I would not be gay. Came back, and I took a red eye. I took my $1,500 for my bar mitzvah that I had since I was age 13. And I took a red eye to New York with my mom bawling. I walked into Richard Meyer's office, who was the architect that I wanted to work for. And by the way, Toby O'Rourke, my business partner, life partner, moved to New York. We both moved to New York because this was a safe space. And it was a place that we had both visited and felt comfortable, like, you know what, we could start here from scratch. We can be our own family and create our own family. So I walked into Richard Meyer's office, and luckily the boy at the front desk thought I was cute. I got an interview with Tom Pfeiffer, and I got the job. And I didn't feel like I was gay, so I was out, but I never felt like, yes, I'm gay. I'm having fun. I'm going out to parties. I'm meeting new people. I'm gay. But I didn't really feel gay again until I went to Columbia, where I was really gay. And I decided that, you know, I'm not political, but I wanted to make sure that people knew I was gay because there weren't too many of us. So I graduated from Columbia, and it was the recession, and I didn't have a job. So I went to go to Lafayette, Louisiana, which was 1994. The week before I moved there, the Ku Klux Klan marched in full garb onto the campus. That was also the year, most of you don't know this, but there was a television show called Hill Street Blues, and there was a big thing that this one detective was going to be shown naked from behind, and it was mayhem. Louisiana blocked it, didn't allow it. So while I was at Columbia, my thesis was about sex, drugs, and money. So I visited sex clubs, I visited banks, I visited places of worship, and I did this whole study about how they all sort of was this all about addiction. And I put up a sorry, I put up a exhibition of the work, and the next day I walked in, and 3 of the posters, which had some sexual content on it, were draped. And the student body was outraged and did this whole thing and protest, etc. And that was another point where I realized, oh shit, I'm gay. Moved back to New York, opened up my own practice, doing pretty well. So indirectly, I'm trying to make positive impact on both architecture, but also on my community. And I didn't realize I was gay again until about 3 years ago when I was in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and I was with some clients of mine who I just met, maybe a month before we went out for lunch at their very upscale country club, which was all white. I'm turning 60, as I said. My clients are the same age as I am. Everyone was about 75 to 80, cowboy hats, the whole thing. They didn't know I was gay, and all of a sudden we were talking, and I was like, oh shit, I'm not sure what the climate is here. I felt uncomfortable. It was the first time I felt really uncomfortable, like I'm gay. And I'm here, was Biden, can't remember if Biden was president or if it was Trump. But I felt really uncomfortable, and my husband and my entire family was staying in Jackson. And I came back to the house, and I was so ashamed that I didn't say anything about my husband. I didn't say anything that alluded that I was gay. I had this whole sort of breakdown of like, oh my God, like I've been openly gay for all this time in this very comfortable place, which I call home, New York. So I decided that I would be more involved. Matthew became, I think, the first openly gay, you're gay, right? President of the New York AIA.
First out.
I said openly. Did I say open? Open. Anyways, so I'm part of, I joined the AIA because I don't like big clubs. I don't like big organizations. I want to break them all down. So I decided I would subvertly be a part of it and do what I can to make sure people knew that I was gay. The shoes help. It all helps. It all helps. It also helps when in my younger years, I would literally pimp myself out. I would dress up so seductively when I was working with fashion clients. And I would walk in with my wife beater or whatever into a big meeting and to make sure that everyone was aware, like, I'm gay. But most recently, actually, I'm not sure if any of this is making sense. Oh, besides the fact that my parents told me that I would never, ever become anything when they found out that I was gay, that none of my dreams would come true. Who they recently said, you were right, Brian, you did everything you did everything you ever wanted to do. So I have my own practice. We're celebrating 30 years next year. Rizzoli published Masano Work Building Blocks, our monograph. And then, this is when I get emotional. So, and actually this, Judy, this is a big step because usually I start crying. So recently I received my fellowship. And I think during my fellowship speech or whatever that I gave quickly off the cuff. Actually, I wrote my entire speech, put it on that podium, and never looked at it, and just like winged it. So I said that I wanted that FAIA because I thought it was like validation of who I was as an architect, who I was in the community. And what I realized was, just as I am here, is that I really became a part of the community and really developed really good friends, amazing friends, that the machine of what I call the AIA is made up of people, individuals. And they're incredibly giving. And when I received my FAIA, this is something I never dreamed of, but this is when I'm going to cry. I would start to get all these emails from other gay colleagues saying, "Oh my God, you know, this makes it all seem possible. That if you can be a big fag, then maybe we could be big fags." And I was like, wow, this is like, I don't know, it just was very moving for me that to come sort of reach this place in my life where I'm making a positive impact. That's it.
Well, that was amazing. I would now like to invite up Ruth Rowe, who is a partner at Datner Architects and an extraordinary human being. Hey, not about you. Not about you. I heard her give her acceptance speech for a very important award last week at Open House New York, and I immediately emailed her. Yep. So she probably doesn't identify as a badass, but she's a badass. So I immediately emailed her the next morning and said, "Are you doing anything next Tuesday night? You've got to come. Like, just regurgitate 3 minutes of what you did last night." She's extraordinary. Ruth Rowe.
Hi. So I identify as a queer, non-binary immigrant. I'm married. I have a wife and 3 kids. And I think all of those descriptions, as each of you identified, is not a footnote or a disclaimer. Those are credentials. Okay. You know, the question I want to think about with this group is what makes a good architect? Recently, I was interviewing candidates for a summer internship, or a few summer internship positions at our office, and you know, there are a couple of ways that we evaluate folks, right? First, we look at their skills, because we're fulfilling a need. We need them to, you know, provide visualizations. They have, you know, responsibility to provide team support. But then we also look at values alignment. You know, we are a mission-driven firm at Datner Architects, so we want to know what their motivation is, and we want to know that they have the same ethos and values that we have in terms of approaching design. And then I start to ask and want to find out whether they are a good designer. And so we walk through their portfolio, and I ask them, you know, describe your work and how you came to that design, and I listen. And so, you know, there are a few ways that people walk through their designs, and some are data-driven. They're very logical, and you can tell that they're very rigorous, hard-working folks. Some have a very formal and inspired approach to architecture. You know, a lot of architecture has to have beauty, innate beauty, because, you know, you eat with your eyes first, right? And then there's a third type, who starts to just talk about their designs, and they speak from the perspective of the user, whether it's the user within the building or the user that walks past the building. And they talk about how the public would interact and interface with the building. They talk about the neighborhood history, culture, context, access to open space, daylight, shade, access to recreation. And then they also talk about, like someone had spoken today, whether the place is safe, whether we are employing universal design or inclusive spaces, right? So this third type is really pulling from what is lived experiences. Malcolm Gladwell, in his book Outliers, said you need 10,000 hours of practice to make yourself an expert. And I think 10 hours every day of a 3-year architecture program would make you an expert, maybe in building data and analytics, and maybe it is being able to hone your design skills. But I don't know that 3 years in architecture school is going to give you the lived experiences that each of you can bring to the practice. So I often say that in my childhood, right, I was very much informed by growing up in Kentucky and living below the poverty line. So when you're poor, you don't think about that you're an immigrant, or you don't think about that you may be queer. You only think about the fact that you don't have access to the things that others have access to. And so I grew up both in urban environments as well as semi-rural environments. When I was, we immigrated to New York when I was 3, and our family of 5 lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we didn't have washer dryers within the unit. We had the laundry room down in the basement. And when I was 3, 4 years old, my mom was just under 30 years old, a young woman, and she refused to go down to the basement by herself, so she always had me accompany her down there because she felt safer by having someone there. So I spent a lot of time in that basement laundry room because she felt unsafe. But now, as a practice in our studios, in our housing studios, when we design affordable housing, we always make sure that the laundry room is on the 2nd floor with daylight and views. And I know that from day one, that design is not broken and it's going to be a safe space. The other experience is growing up in Kentucky, also poor. We relied on free bread that supermarkets would drop off the day before they expired. And I ate a lot of free government cheese, which actually, if anyone has had free government cheese, it's actually very, very good. Within the complex that we lived, my mom had access to a community garden, and she found a lot of pride in being able to cultivate tomatoes, peppers, and squash for the family to accompany some of those free items that we had. So now when we incorporate community gardens within our affordable housing projects, I know from day one we can build sources of pride for our residents. But there's so many spaces that we as architects design broken from day one. And while we are still building towards diversity, we have diversity in appearance in many respects, but we don't always have diversity in experience. And access to restrooms is one of the biggest things that the trans and non-binary community struggle with. It is a basic human right, and in schools, 60% of trans students actually avoid using the bathroom because they feel unsafe, uncomfortable. They are harassed, bullied, and often face violence. And a similar percentage report missing school for the same reasons. Avoiding bathrooms, as you know, can lead to medical issues, including UTI or other health complications. As of 2023, only 2% of AIA members identify as LGBTQ, and less than 0.05% identify as non-binary. We lack architects who can share those lived experiences and really influence change. Right now, 1.6% of US adults identify as trans or non-binary, and for that population, they're entering spaces that are from day one, even if it's a new building, it is fundamentally broken. And I know that we as architects, allies, and those who especially identify as LGBTQ, we have the responsibility to take the risk and put in front of the clients the possibility of creating multi-stall, all-gender bathrooms, because we have done this for other populations. Only 1.7% of the US population are in wheelchairs, and we know we make sure that all of our buildings are accessible. So if we have 1.6% of US adults identifying as trans and non-binary, right, we know that 100% of the time bathrooms are broken and we have the responsibility to push for that change. So I would like to say that, we are working with LGBTQIA Alliance as well as AIA in putting forth a bathroom bill to ensure a pathway to be able to include all gender bathrooms in the plumbing code, which currently it disallows. So I really hope that each of you can be there to support not only within your communities and your firms, but show up with the AIA and show up with your local council person, assembly person to really push for acceptance of this bill. Thank you.
I think we have time for one or two more. Yes? Oh, please come. Yes.
Hi, I'm Sky. I'm an introvert who's going to try to do comedy, so forgive me in advance. So it turns out that I was macho and I didn't even know it. I thought I was just like assertive and confident, a New Yorker. But I was always raised with boys and in social circles with men, and I didn't really think too much of it. And then I had a major life event, and I started hanging out only with women and weirdos and non-binary people and basically not cis men. And I realized, oh no, I'm over here like puffing my chest out, like cutting other people off in conversation, like I'm trying to win an argument that hasn't even started yet. And I didn't really notice it until I'd hang out with my friends and I'd go back to work and I'd pick up the phone and call a contractor, and like my whole body would shift, be like I'm channeling this like big Maher persona, like I'm auditioning for The Sopranos or something. Like, yeah, Tony, we're gonna need that concrete slab poured today or we're gonna have a problem, Like, what the hell happened to me? And then it made me realize that our voices aren't even really ours. They're like these group projects, and we code switch all day just to be understood. And I didn't really like the guy I had become. It reminded me of the office I started at in Virginia, where it was like a boys' club, and you had to pretend that you like golf, and you had to listen to Sean Hannity, so you had something to talk to during lunch, and I'm like, I don't want to be this guy. I don't need to crack ass jokes. I just want to talk about like load-bearing walls and peace, And I was like, where did this macho posturing even come from? And then it hit me. External genitals. Think about it. If my most vulnerable body part was hanging out there all day long, I'd probably be like puffy and defensive to like just evolutionary anxiety, protect your goods, So the next time I had to get on a call to the job site, I had this idea, and I donned my packer. And for those of you that don't know, a packer or packing penis is like a little like fashion accessory. It's meant to give the visual of having a bulge. It's originally made for trans men, but it can pass on as a prop for other uses too. So I slid the thing into my jeans, I dialed in, I did the whole negotiation in my full like big dick energy mode. I got off the call, pulled it out, put it on the counter with all this like toxic masculine energy channeled into this silicone appendage. And I was like, wow, some people have to live in this energy 24/7, but me, I get to clock out. Detach my metaphorical dick and go make some soup. Thank you.
Sky, you need to do sketch comedy, please. Yes. Amazing. Sounds like we have one more story. Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, I'm going to try and channel my theater kid roots, but it's been a while. It's been almost a decade, so it's going to kind of pull it out. Hi, I'm Jack. I work as an architectural designer. I am a queer, non-binary, disabled person, and I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about myself, leading into like one small moment that I think is important. But I was born and raised in Georgia, way north of Atlanta. And I kind of grew up with this sense of discomfort in the environment around me, and I kind of watched as the environment around me rapidly transitioned from what was basically stolen Cherokee hunting woods to a massive suburb. And that transition really kind of defined my worldview, because not only did like the syntheticness of the suburban environments that were abutting against these old growth woods that I played in as a child, that contrast always felt really intense to me. And so it kind of felt like this inevitable move forward as a lonely little child in the South, to move into wanting to kind of engage with and design the spaces that I live in and work in, and really to figure out why everything sucked so much and why everything was so uncomfortable and poorly built and all of that. And so, you know, all of that kind of led me on this journey. I moved to Rhode Island to kind of escape Atlanta and to get out of the South and to go to school. And then I found myself in art school kind of surrounded by queerness all the time until I stepped into the architecture building. And I had never spent so much of my life in queer spaces. I had never really spent any of my life in queer spaces. So I remember also being super jarred by that transition, and it kind of always made me feel like not queer enough because I didn't know how to like perform that queerness in all of the typical ways. But I still sensed like the importance of being in a space surrounded by so many queer people, and it felt like the sense of safety that I had never had in my entire life. And when I was in school, I would go back to Georgia for the summer a lot. I mean, anyways, but I would find jobs there and sometimes in architecture. And I spent this one summer at this huge, like 400-person firm in Atlanta that did kind of like all the big institutional projects around the city and the Southeast. And, you know, I found myself immediately kind of reverting back into the protection mechanisms I had built for myself to survive a childhood in Georgia in a very conservative environment. And I remember I was in this internship program at this huge firm with 4 other interns, and we all kind of had this sense of guardedness. We were all so nervous to be in this environment and all felt to a degree unsafe, to be honest. And I remember going on our first site visit together, and we all, the interns and I, kind of hopped in my car together to go to the site visit across town. And we just had this moment of, oh, so you're gay, and you're gay, and you're, oh, so we're all gay. Like, and it was kind of this moment of like, oh, thank God. Like, we're not alone in this giant firm of white male faces. And it really just made me realize, like, you know, we can all sit here and say how important it is to be in queer spaces and to be surrounded by queer people and to not be alone, and it's still a completely other thing to have. And I think in architecture, queer people have this, and in the world, queer people have this way of finding each other, especially in unsafe spaces. And, you know, I guess I don't really have like an end to that, but I just think the moments in which I have found a queer person in a space that has felt so intensely unsafe, those moments have always kind of been the most memorable to me. And ironically, one of my friends from that internship program now works 2 floors below me at a different firm in the city, and I'm still in touch with all of them more than probably anyone else from that time in my life. And so, you know, I don't think that queer people should need the trauma of surviving a hostile environment together to build community, but it definitely helps. So I guess all of that is to say, like, you know, the importance of being a queer person in a space, and I think that ties back to a lot of what other people have said about just the importance of, not being alone, not feeling alone, having space. So I will.
Amazing. Thanks for sticking with us, y'all. I know there's going to be some pizza, but before we break, I would like to invite our last speaker, Ro Gia, who's also a part of Feminist Spatial Practices, and Jake from the Abyss. I don't know where you are, but I know there's a video. Amazing. So, Ro, please join us. An architectural theorist, amazing human, and Ro.
Thank you so much for having me. So I titled my in quotation marks, Asian females. I consider dog writing to be a branch of feminist theory, or the other way around. Wrote on a harrowing opening Companion Species Manifesto, Dogs, People, and Significant Otherness from 2003. It became a salvation for me, but only much later, around 2020, let's say. Between those times, in the summer of 2013, when I first came to the US for grad school, on a dinner table in a courtyard, when I had my welcoming meal with my cohort and alumni from Southeast University, China in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I talked about my two dogs, Mozza and Rella, with much love and affection, from whom I was away for the first time in our lives and across thousands of miles. Then a guy, a dude, across the table from me asked something like, "Why do you even want to continue to pursue architecture study, since you're so passionate about your dogs?" I was stunned. I laughed through at the moment, but the question and the uncomfortable feeling lingered, less about holding a grudge, but more about a wonder of what is it about dogs or my relationship with them that is perceived so unarchitectural? Well, from the dawn of architecture, the coming to being of architectural order and social order, as well as declaration of authorship to build, the architecture, such as in the case of the ziggurat of Wu from 21st century BCE, has begun with a partnership with dogs, in companion with paw prints. And indeed, I am passionate about dogs and architecture. They have both been my dreams, and such genuine coexistence should be taken seriously. But how? Of course, there are some immediate answers and assumptions to my first question. People talking about dogs, people talking about kids, or perhaps women specifically, are considered or reaffirmed as weak, not professional, not serious, confined with care and nursing work, domestic, trivial, juvenile, even racially codified, possibly particularly violating certain expectations of architectural discipline. So I have to write about it in architecture, academic, professional settings, and Haraway, an esteemed historian of science writing about her relationship with her dogs and sanctions dog writing as a form of feminist writing or vice versa, much hit home and paved the way, making it easier for me to do so. I have since been working along this line by firmly and persistently keeping an Instagram with exclusively dog writing amidst professional architecture historians and serious profiles. Specifically, I have been working our lived experience, especially around a monograph inquiry towards Asian feminist architecture possibilities that is interwoven with a collective inquiry that is just out as a special series that gets edited with eFlux. So check it out. And here I introduce Rella as a possible quote-unquote Asian female, in difference from the dog of Haraway's heart, Canyon. As a female born in Nanjing in China and spent half of her life in the US as Asian diaspora, although securing her legal residential status much easier than her human. Meanwhile, it has also been noted that all dogs have come from Asia, vis-a-vis Homo sapiens from Africa. This is further complicated by another Asian female of our pack, the biologically born stud but much feminine Motze. Rella just passed away approximately 2 months ago after our 14 years of that chronic life partnership, and she begins to live synchronically as I continue to work my way through writing, making, thinking, and living about situated perspectives, motherhood, significant otherness, various scales of time, class difference, cannibalism, moving identity, among other nexus for us to live together in better ways in a troublesome world through marginalized architectural agencies. Thank you for hearing my Howl, or oof, or Wang.
Amazing.
Dogs, identity, and architecture. I think we're done.
Yeah.
It's enough for me.
Yes. Well, yeah.
Hit it.
I know you're good at going off the cuff, but I wrote notes, so I'm going to share some of them real quick. I just want to say I'm so proud of all of you who got up here today and those who listened. Thank you for staying. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for being your authentic selves here in this space. Thank you for sharing about what it is to be a woman architect, to being a mother, to code switching, to being mighty, to being Judy. To showing us that it's a privilege to be taken seriously, and we should be, to showing us that no timeline matters. We are all on our own timeline, that living things ebb and flow, that dogs are amazing, that all of our identities are not a footnote, they're credentials, and that we really need to deploy and act and be ourselves, be authentically us, and really think about what we all can do to create inclusive spaces and just, I appreciate you all right now. And I don't know how to end it, so I will let you end it.
There's no end, there's no beginning, except they're going to kick us out at 8 o'clock.